If you ask a nerd what Linux is, they'll tell you that it's a penguin. And what they're referring to is Tux the penguin. He's the mascot for Linux. And there are many things that I love about Linux. But a few of them are how it's open source software, how there are so many distributions to choose from, and how Linux compares to Windows and Mac. What I'm talking about with distributions, and these are just a few examples right here, are different operating systems within the Linux spectrum. They're just different versions of Linux. They've been adapted to a specific purpose. For this one, for example, is Linux Mint, and I would use it transitioning somebody from Windows to Linux for the first time. It's similar to Windows, but it's a much smaller operating system, so it functions better on older computers. Ubuntu, I also love. It's what I personally use. I find it great for college students because it comes pre-installed with anything you could need. And a program, for example, that's already pre-installed on there would be LibreOffice, and it's comparable to Microsoft Office. Same with PowerPoint and all of that. It's all there. And these two, you don't have to remember to update your terminal, which is convenient for newer users. It will remind you to do updates. Scientific Linux is used on some supercomputers, and it can do just about any calculation you need it to do. It's quite impressive. And then we have Kali Linux. Kali is basically a hacking operating system. It's designed to hack things. I love Kali. Parrot is actually my favorite operating system for hacking. If you want to check out all of the different operating systems, you can go to DistroWatch and you can scroll through them. There are hundreds. And you can find one to fit whatever need you have for one. Another thing I love about them is they're all open source software. So if I found an operating system I loved, but it just wasn't quite right, since they're open source, I can go and I can find the source code for them, and I can adapt it to what I need. If I need to add something to it to make it just a little bit better for what I need, or if I see it and I love it and I just need to tweak it a tiny bit and take away a few things, I can do that with the source code, and then I've made a new operating system. Another thing that I love about them, not only that they're open source, which is convenient because Windows and Apple are not open source software. If you wanted to tweak something in their software, they make it extremely complicated to do that. Another thing I dislike about Windows is its updates. Say you have a presentation due in 5 minutes and you just need to upload it. You go, you have Windows, and you turn on your computer, and your Windows is deciding to update. You could be waiting that 5 minutes and miss your deadline for a presentation because your computer is updating. Now when I turn on Ubuntu, it will not be updating, ever. The only time Ubuntu will update is when I tell it to. It will occasionally remind you, but it will not automatically update for you. I love this feature about them. Linux does have a few cons. Occasionally you have to go and find your own drivers. But there are pros to it as well. Generally, you can find a program comparable to a Windows program you love. Say you love Photoshop and that's all you want to use. But Linux has a program called GIMP, G-I-M-P, and it's comparable to Photoshop. And if you needed to use that, it's free. And it's easy to download, and I find it better than Windows for a lot of things. But say you have this one Windows program that you absolutely love. There's a program called Wine, and it's on all of the Linux, and you can use it to run Windows programs if you have to. There are a few programs that will not run through Wine, like some online games, and for those you would have to have Windows. But you can often find programs similar, that are available for Linux. I find Mac hard to manipulate at all. Apple software is not friendly to users in that way. They like their software as it is, and they don't want you to make any changes. Even though originally, Linux and Apple were both based on Unix. But Apple decided to market, whereas Linux decided to stay open source and let people develop things on their own. I love that Linux is open source and how many choices I have with the different distributions. And overall, I find Linux to be better than Mac and Windows. And also, Tux is adorable.